this sent out. Check the live streaming to make sure it's working. Yep, we are live. All right. Where are we? Bhajan Rahasha. Okay, and we will start. Let's see. Got everything set up. One thing I didn't do was to mute everybody. Everyone's muted now. Okay, first we start with the kirtan. Today, okay, that's interesting. So, okay. Let's do Shri Radhika Stava. Radhe Jaya 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 Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Taruni Mandala Taruni Mandala Mahite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Namo Darurati Vardhana Veshe Adi Diskutavrina Vineshe Namo Darurati Vardhana Veshe Adi Diskutavrina Vineshe Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Madhava Jaya Shabhanutani Navasasile Navita Saki Guna Ramita Vishake Shabhanutani Navasasile Navita Saki Guna Ramita Vishake Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Guru Mai Koruna Bharate Tanika Sanatana Vanita Karuna Bharate Tanika Sanatana Vanita Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Gokula Taruni Jaya Madhava Jaya. Radhe Jaya 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 Jaya. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Radhe, 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 Jaya Radhe. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravicharya all Statetas to Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Marshila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatcha Deja Tarne. Let me read the translation to this poem by Srila Rupa Goswami. O Radha, all glory is unto you, all glory is unto you, beloved of Madhava, object of worship for all the young girls of Gokula. You dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodar's love and attachment for you. You are the controller of Vrindavan, the pleasure groves of Lord Hari. You are a new moon, arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu. You are the friend of Lalita, and your wonderful qualities, friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna, endear you to Vishaka. You are an ocean of compassion, and your divine characteristics are described by the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara. O Radha, please be merciful to me. So, Shrimati Radharani Ki Jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Ki Jai. So, today, I just want to make sure that this is what the calendar says. Here we go. This is February 5th. And it is actually Bhismashtami. All right. Okay. Bhismashtami. So, we're going to talk about Grandfather Bhisma, and if we have time, we'll get to the Bhajan Rahasya. So, Homagana Timidandasha, Gadanjana Shalakya Chakshur, Unminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let me just pull up the chat window. Okay, chat. So I can see if someone has a heart attack or not. Okay. Let me just organize this whole thing. Okay. Give me 1 second. And then we will have this organized properly. I think we'll almost have it done. Alright. Just want to make sure I can see the chat window. Okay, so we're not going to do any screen sharing for this because I don't I may have a slideshow, but I don't remember if I have a slideshow about Bhisma. So here is the information about Bhisma. So I think many of you know who Grandfather Bhisma is, but there's many details in his life you may not know. Okay, so here we go. So, of course, Bhisma drove a chariot as a Kshatriya with the banner being a golden palm leaf. So each and every Kshatriya had his particular type of banner. Like Arjuna, he had a banner of Hanuman, Haribo. Anyway, I don't know everybody's banner. So, the story of Bhisma is as follows. There were 8 Vasus in the heavenly planets, and these 8 Vasus were headed up by one Vasu. One of the names of one of the Vasus was Jao. Okay. And Jao had a wife. And his wife had a friend who was an earthling, like us. And her friend wanted, what did the friend want? The friend wanted to drink the milk from the heavenly society cows, the Kamadhenus. So, what happened is that Jiao's wife nagged Jiao to take Vashishta Muni's cow. And we know Vashishta Muni is not going to take that lying down. He, or sitting up, he basically arranged to have Bhisma, or Jiao's, cursed. And he cursed all the Vasus because all the Vasus took part in this. But it was Jiao's idea of being nagged by his wife. So, therefore, they were all cursed to be born on earth, which is a curse. And so they begged, oh, forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. And Vashishta Muni said, yeah, you only have to live a very short life, except for one of you who is the main responsible Vasu, and that's Jiao. So he will live, for a long time, the lifespan of all of you, basically. That's a long time. So, once upon a time, just keep that in mind. So once upon a time, there was a king whose name was Mahabhish. And this great king went to heaven. Pretty nice. And so he went to heaven, and he was attending Lord Brahma's dancing performance. Not that Lord Brahma was dancing, but Lord Brahma was hosting a dancing performance by the Apsaras and others who were dancing, and the Gandharvas who were playing whatever drums or whatever they play. And during that performance, there was a breeze, and that breeze blew up the dress. It didn't blow it up, but the dress of Ganga Devi actually went a little higher than chastity would be good for. And so what happened is that Mahabhish stared at her. Ooh. And you don't do that. The rest of the demigods looked away. So Brahma became very angry, and he cursed Mahabhish. You should be born on the earth and then marry Ganga on the earth planet. So Ganga sort of liked this idea because she was attracted to the person who was looking at her. Everybody wants to be the cynosure of all eyes. So as Ganga was leaving this performance, she ran into the Vasus who explained their particular situation, and she agreed to become their mother and kill them all immediately after they were born, except for Jiao, the one who was primarily responsible, the one who was cursed by Vashishta Muni, who was going to have a very, very long life. So, Mahabhish became Shantanu. So Shantanu, who was a great king in the same dynasty, the Kuru dynasty, and so Shantanu was one day hunting, and he was by the bank of the Ganges. And when he was by the bank of the Ganges, Ganga Devi came out of the Ganges. And he just went, wow, I've never seen something or someone as attractive as this lady. Will you marry me? And she said, well, let's make a deal. And that deal is, I will marry you if you never disagree with anything I do. Otherwise, I'm out of here. Okay, he says. It's a deal. He was thinking, how can I ever disagree with this pretty lady? You know, sometimes people think if someone's very pretty, someone's very attractive, or on the other hand, if a man is very handsome and a lady's looking like that, everything's perfect. You're bewildered by bodily beauty, by the senses, and everything ain't perfect. Okay. So what happened is they got married and they kept having children. And shortly after each child was born, of course, each child was one of the Vasus. Shortly after each child was born, Ganga Devi dunked them in the Ganges and killed them, drowned them in the Ganges. And Shantanu, who was Mahabhish before, really just had to tolerate, or else he'd lose his wife. You know, what's better? What's worse? Losing your wife or having your kids killed? I think, normally losing the wife would be all right and not having the kids killed. That's much better. So, anyway, 7 were killed. Finally, Shantanu says, stop. And Ganga Devi says, well, that's it. You disagreed with me, honey. So I am out of here. And so he got very upset. Shantanu got very upset. And even Ganga Devi took the one child that was still alive. And that one child that was still alive was first called Deva Vrata. And later, Bhisma, when he took this vow, which we're going to mention in a second. So Deva Vrata was tutored by Brahaspati, Vasishta Muni, and even his martial arts guru, Parishuram. So, later on, he was returned. He was given back to his father. His father was very happy with him. And he showed his great prowess. Devavrata showed his great prowess. And he was made the Yuvaraj, which means the person who was going to become the next king after the present king retires. So later on, what happened was that Shantanu was also by the bank of the river again. And he saw this lady there who was rowing the boat, a fisherman's daughter, ostensibly. Of course, that's explained previously, that she was the daughter of King Vasu, and she had been hidden by King Vasu because he wanted to protect her because the demons were taking birth on Earth, and she was supposed to be the mother of Vyasadeva. Okay, so Satyavati was ostensibly a daughter of a fisherman, and previously she had given birth to Vyasadeva, joining with Parashara Muni, but that's a whole other story. So in any case, Shantanu fell in love with her. He wanted to marry her, but the father, or ostensible father, or supposed father, the fisherman, did not allow her to marry Shantanu because he wanted her son to become the next king. So Shantanu became very depressed, and there weren't any psychologists around to give him some antidepressants at that particular point. So he just like fell into a deep, what we call funk, means depression. And so Bhisma didn't know, oh, poor Devavrata at that time, did not know what was happening with his father. So eventually he asked his father's assistant or chariot driver or prime minister or something, what's happening with my father? It was revealed. So Devavrata goes to the fisherman and he says, I want your daughter to marry my father. And the fisherman says, but you're supposed to be the next king. And Bhisma says, I renounce the kingdom. I will never become the king. And so, can I have your daughter for my father? And the fisherman said, no, because you're going to get married one day and you're going to have children. Your children may rival Satyavati's son. So then Bhisma said, I'm going, or Shantanu, sorry, not Shantanu, Devavrata, said, I am going to remain unmarried, a Khanda Brahmachari my whole life, my Shtiki Brahmachari. And that's when the demigod showered down flowers, and he got the name Bhisma, which means terrible vow, because for a Kshatriya, that is a terrible vow. So Bhisma took Satyavati back to his father, and his father was so pleased. I didn't ask you to do this, but I'm going to give you a blessing that you are not going to die unless you desire to die. Whew. Wow. And that, of course, was the cause of his long life, as well as the curse of Vishishna Muni. And Bhisma vowed to see his father and whoever became the king. In other words, he would obey without question whoever was the king. So that later led to real big problems. So then, okay, Satyavati married Shantanu, and they had two kids, Vitravirya and another kid named Chitrangada. So Chitrangada, he had a fight with a Gandharva by the same name, and he was killed by the Gandharva, so that left one kid, and that was Vitravirya. And Vitravirya really wanted to have kids, but he was kind of weakling, so he couldn't kidnap his own wives, which was the system at that time, or Swayamvara. And so he, Satyavati sent Bhisma to kidnap the king of Kashi's daughters, Amba, Ambalika, and Ambika. Actually, in order would be Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. Okay, it means Amba, very little Amba. And so he kidnapped them, brought them back, and Amba said, no, I've given my heart to Shalva. Because Bhisma, when he kidnapped them, he defeated Shalva, and he defeated all the Kshatriyas that were there trying to win these girls over. And so Amba came back and said, I give my heart to Shalva. And so Bhisma said, okay, I'll send you back. We'll keep the other two girls. He sent Amba back. Shalva refused. And Amba came back because at that point, if a girl was taken by someone else, a Kshatriya, because of his pride, his prestige, would never marry that girl. The girl was considered unmarriageable by a Kshatriya, at least. And of course, that's similar to the story when Narakasura kidnapped 16,100 princesses, and Krishna freed them. He couldn't get married to anyone else, but Krishna was so liberal, he decided to marry them. Even though they were never touched by Narakasura, because Narada Muni made sure that Narakasura didn't touch them, because Narada Muni said to Narakasura that after such and such date, which is auspicious, you can get married to them and touch them, but not before then, just be auspicious. So Narakasura was following Narada Muni's advice. So anyway, then Amba comes back and says, Shalva wouldn't marry me because you kidnapped me, you got to marry me. And Bhisma refuses. Amba becomes so upset, she goes to her uncle, who was a friend of Parashuram. Parashuram, Bhisma's spiritual master, tries to convince Bhisma to marry Amba. They have a fight for 23 days, and Bhisma wins, or at least a draw. And then Amba is so frustrated, she does penance to Shiva to be reborn as the cause of death for Bhisma. So, she is actually reborn in a very interesting way. She's reborn as the daughter of Drupada. But Lord Shiva has said to Drupada that, and Drupada, he really doesn't like Drona, and there's a whole other story. And whole other story. Because Drupada has this grudge with Drona, because Drona took away half his kingdom after he trained up the Pandavas, but no time for that story. So Shikandi was born as the daughter of Drupada, but Lord Shiva told Drupada that Shikandi is a boy. So Drupada had so much faith in Lord Shiva that he arranged the marriage of Shikandini, who was a girl, with another girl who was a princess. And so the two girls got married. Now, the modern age, perfectly acceptable. But when the second girl found out that she was married to a girl, she went to her father. She was so upset that her father who was a king, was getting ready to attack Drupada's kingdom. So there was a war that was going to be fought. And Shikandani thought, I am at fault because of this. So let me just commit suicide. So she runs away and she's crying. And this Yaksha, who was the associate of Kuvera, Stuna Varna, hears her crying, becomes compassionate, and says, all right, I'll give you my masculinity, and I'll take your femininity. And after everything's settled, we'll switch back, okay? And then, okay. So she becomes Shikandi instead of Shikandani, and goes back and says, I'm a Marian now. No problem. So then everybody examines to make sure it's a man, or he's a man. And in fact, he is a man. Meantime, Kuvera goes to visit Stuna Karna, his associate, and Kuvera becomes so upset with this associate, Yaksha, what he has done, that he curses him to keep the femininity until Shikandi or Shikandini dies. So that way Shikandi became a man, but was a girl before. And was a girl in the previous life as Amba. Okay? And Bhisma has spies everywhere. He knows exactly what's happening. Okay. So, fast forward. Of course, we know that Bhisma, because he had taken that vow to always uphold whoever is the king in Hastinapur, he didn't interfere when there was the attempted disrobing of Draupadi, when Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra were harassing the Pandavas in so many different ways. He spoke a few words, but he didn't do anything, even though he was the most powerful person on earth at that particular time. He could have stopped all the irreligiosity because he was thinking, got to keep my promise. So you're going to see in a second, that's a problem. He's thinking, I got to keep my promise. So, fast forward. Of course, he always favors the Pandavas, but still, he can't disobey the king. So, fast forward. After there's so many attempts on the Pandavas' life, the Pandavas are sent in exile after the attempted disrobing of Draupadi and the gambling matches. There were 2 gambling matches. The second one was when they were sent in exile. Fast forward to the Battle of Kurukshetra. And in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Bhisma is appointed to be the first commander-in-chief. He doesn't let Karna fight at that particular juncture because he really has great animosity towards Karna. And he says, as long as I'm alive, you're not going to fight in this battle. Because why does he have that animosity? Because Karna is so much against Arjuna. Arjuna is like his mortal enemy. So, Bhishma is the commander-in-chief. And as commander-in-chief, he doesn't really fight seriously with Arjuna because he loves Arjuna. Arjuna is like his grandson. And he's not going to kill Arjuna even though he has the ability to do so. Just not going to do it. Duryodhana taunts Bhishma. And he says to Bhishma, you're fighting like a eunuch. And you must fight seriously. That's an order. So Bhishma takes out 5 golden arrows. And he said these arrows will kill the Pandavas. And he imbues them with his Shakti. So he has great Shakti, mantras or whatever they did at that particular time. These arrows have the potency to kill the Pandavas. So Duryodhana is thinking, all right, just to keep them until the next day when Bhishma can kill the Pandavas, let me keep them safe. So he puts them in his tent, under his tent, and has a person guard them. Meantime, Krishna understands exactly what's going on, as he always does, because he's in everyone's heart, and this whole thing is planned by him anyway. It's his dramatic performance. So he tells Arjuna, let's go visit Duryodhana. Now, at that particular time, the Kshatriyas were so attached to the rules of regulation, they didn't fight at night, so they sometimes would mix with each other, go to each other's camps at night, and they trusted that people would stick to the rules and regulations of not fighting at night. Although later on the rules became broken and the Kurus did attack at night, and then Arjuna and the Pandavas, they also had to break that same rule to counteract the Kurus' attack at night, and that's where Gatotkacha was able to win and kill so many of the Kurus, actually many Akshahinis of the Kurus. So, anyway, Arjuna goes and visits Duryodhana, and Duryodhana says, what do you want? You want your kingdom back? You can have it. Of course, he knows that Arjuna is not going to ask for his kingdom back because the Kshatriya is not supposed to beg. It would be worse than death. For one has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So, Duryodhana asks, so what do you want? And Arjuna says, I want those 5 arrows. And Duryodhana goes, oh my God, he got me again. So, Duryodhana, after that, tells Bhishma, you make 5 more arrows. And Bhishma says, I can't, because this particular Shakti, was used up, I guess. And so, I can't do it. So he says, but I can promise you one thing. I'm going to kill Arjuna the next day. And the only thing that could stop that is if Krishna interferes, which he won't, because Krishna promised not to kill. Krishna promised not to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. So Bhisma ferociously attacks Arjuna, and he's firing all these arrows, and Arjuna's life is in jeopardy, and Krishna gets so angry that he breaks his promise not to fight, and he picks up the chariot wheel and rushes towards Grandfather Vishnu. Arjuna grabs Krishna's legs and says, please don't do that. And Bhisma just gets down on his hands and knees, and he's praying, and Krishna has all these wounds on his body. And of course this is transcendental because Krishna has a transcendental body. He doesn't actually have veins, Ashnavi Ram. But Krishna appreciates, it's described that Krishna appreciates Bhishma's arrows as like lovers' bites. So this is a chivalrous exchange. chivalryness and indirect rasa. So anyway, so then Krishna protects Arjuna. Actually, on another day, Arjuna wasn't fighting seriously with Bhisma, and Krishna said, I'm going to kill him, and Arjuna had to stop him on that day too. So, finally, Krishna says to Arjuna, if you want to defeat Bhisma, you put Shikhandi right in front of you on your chariot. Bhisma will not shoot arrows at you because Shikhandi is your shield. And he knows that previously Shikhandi was who? Amba. And he knows that previously Shikhandi was Shikhandini. And he knows that he will never fight with anyone who is female gendered or was female gendered. It's an interesting word, gender. Nowadays there's so many genders. Anyway, so Arjuna does that, and Bhisma just like fires the arrows in all sorts of directions, but not at Arjuna. And Krishna says, shoot, boom, shoot, boom, shoot, boom. So again and again, there's shooting. And Bhisma is filled with arrows, but he's still rushing at Arjuna. He's such a Kshatriya. And so Arjuna eventually keeps firing, and it knocks over Bhisma, and he's in a bed of arrows. And of course, Arjuna didn't hit the head of grandfather Bhisma, obviously, but everywhere else. And Bhisma's lying on this bed of arrows, and his head is just like hanging there. And he says, I need a pillow for my head. And Arjuna shoots some arrows and makes a pillow for grandfather Bhisma's head. And then Bhisma says, I'm really thirsty. And Arjuna points his arrow at the ground and brings out the Ganges from the ground, from the underground flow, and goes into Bhisma's mouth. And he's able to drink the water of the Ganges. And in this way, he lies on this bed of arrows during the whole period of the Battle of Kurukshetra, which is the month of December, until the sun starts to go to the north again. And that's called the winter solstice. That's the shortest day of the year for the northern hemisphere. And then the sun starts to go to the north. And so grandfather Bhisma gave many, many different instructions to the Pandavas, specifically Yudhisthira, who was very reluctant to become king. Why was he reluctant to become king? Because he felt responsible for the killing of all these personalities. And, you know, when you feel responsible for the killing of all these personalities, then you're guilty. And so Bhisma was able to instruct him in the duties of a king, what he should do. Krishna was also there. And eventually, when it came time for the winter solstice, Bhisma offered prayers to Krishna, and remembering his chivalrous interactions with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and looking at Krishna's lotus feet, he left this world and went back to Godhead, or back to the heavenly planets to be a Vasu. So one may say, well, back to Godhead or back to heavenly planets? Well, I'll explain. Bhisma is an eternal associate of the Lord, and the Vasus are like expansions. The Vasu, that is Jao, the Vasu, is an expansion of Bhisma, who is an eternal associate of the Lord. So somehow or other, by the mercy of the Lord, this happens. And Bhisma is one of the Dwadasa Mahajanas. That means the 12 great personalities. So finally, to summarize this, I wanted to mention the teachings of Bhisma, some of the teachings of Bhisma that he gave on the battlefield field as he was lying on the bed of arrows, the final moments. So these are instructions for leaders, instructions for actually for everyone, but specifically for those who are going to be leaders or set an example, because he was preaching Kshatriya Dharma, obviously, at that point. Dharma had to be a king, leadership Dharma. So these are very important instructions. So let me mention those instructions. So first of all, his instruction for all human beings. He said all human beings, regardless of their responsibilities in this world, should have 9 qualifications. And if you want to be like a bona fide human being, in addition to being a devotee, because if one's not a devotee, then like a cow or an ass. Oh, sorry about that, if I insulted anybody. So, here's the Bhisma's instructions for all human beings, 9 qualifications. One is not to become angry. It's a hard one. So the way to not become angry is we don't contemplate sense objects, become attached to sense objects, lust after sense objects, and then you won't be angry because you won't think you lost anything. I've seen time and time again, when someone has in their mind they want something, then they become angry if they don't get it. It's just like part of nature. So that another point is, even if something happens that apparently makes you angry, you control it, you tolerate it. But it's very important. If you want to be able to tolerate it, you have to avoid contemplating sense objects, desires, plans, whatever. So, first one, all human beings, don't become angry, or at least don't express your anger or control your anger. Second one is not to lie. Always tell the truth. That doesn't mean you got to tell everything. Such a priyatam. We speak pleasingly, truthfully, beneficially. And we always, before we speak, we always think, what will be the result of my thinking? Will it be positive, spiritually, materially, or will it have an adverse effect? Or what is the result of my speaking? So be careful before we open our mouths. Oh yeah, one thing before I continue with the rest of the list. Oh, I forgot to mention that Bhisma recognized that you can break, at the final moment when he was lying on the bed of arrows, he recognized you can break a promise if it can save someone's life, or for Dharma, only under those circumstances. He gave the example that if a bunch of dacoits is chasing someone, and those that they want to kill that person or a family, and the family takes shelter in a sage's ashram, and the dacoits go to the sage and say, "Where's the family?" And the sage says, "They cannot tell a lie." Then the family's here, and they kill the dacoits, kill the family. Then the sage is responsible, in spite of telling the truth, for the death of the family that got killed. So, in certain circumstances, such as Bhisma's circumstance, he should have broken his promise in order to do the best thing for the Pandavas, but he didn't, and because of that, you had this whole conflagration, killing. It was a disaster. And actually was planned by Krishna. Ultimately it was all planned by Krishna so he could get rid of all the demons who are taking birth on the Earth planet, but that's another story. So, getting on with the whole list of things that for every human being, to distribute wealth equally, the next one, to forgive, that's human quality. Every human being is meant to have that quality or manifest that quality, otherwise they're not human beings. To beget children only with one's legitimate wife. That may not apply to everybody. Next one, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body. Prabhupada talked about this. Purity internally and externally. Prabhupada talked about this, especially at second initiation. Those of you who are second initiates should always be trying to cultivate external purity Internal purity by Yaksmaret Pundarikaksham Sabaya Vyantara Shuchi Shri Vishnu by always remembering Krishna. Next one is don't be inimical towards anyone. No enemy is a jata shatra shantas. According to Kapila Dev, that's one of the qualities of a Vaishnava. Next one, to be simple. That doesn't mean simple-minded, but not to be so complex in your brain. To be very simple. And we see Prabhupada exhibited all these qualities. Next, to support servants or subordinates. In other words, compassionate towards servants and subordinates, and shouldn't be like a business exchange that you get something out of it. Okay, so just final points. The Bhisma, there's 14 more points before we take questions. We have about 3 minutes left before we take questions. 1, he said, to get free from anger, one should learn how to forgive. That's for everybody. 2, to be free from unlawful desires, lust, one should not make plans. If one makes plans, that you get attached to those plans, and if they don't happen, you get angry, Prabhu. 3, by spiritual culture, one is able to conquer sleep. If you're always chanting Hare Krishna in your heart and your mind, and when you get up in the morning, early in the morning, it's Haribol. When I go to sleep, I try to chant myself to sleep. 4, by tolerance, only one can conquer desires and avarice and anger. By tolerance only. 5, disturbances from various diseases can be avoided by regulated diets. If you're interested in that, watch my video series, Stop Killing the Devotees, that's on my YouTube channel. Because I see the devotees in general are eating either too much, unregulated times, the wrong things, prepared in ways that are detrimental to the health. Frying, anyway, I don't want to agitate anyone. So, basically, that's it. Prabhupada said disease is caused by overeating, uncleanness, and anxiety. 3 things. Next one. By self-control, one can be freed from false hopes. We have hope against hope. But Krishna consciousness is not a false hope. But expecting things to go well in this world, to get what we want, is false hope. The next one is money can be saved by avoiding undesirable association. Next one is by practice of yoga, one can control hunger. We're talking about bhakti yoga. We're not saying that everybody should do Ashtanga yoga. But yoga means being regulated. Eating at a certain time, not kanashing. Or ganashing, or whatever we pronounce that. Dizziness can be conquered by rising up. Unless one has a heart condition or low blood pressure. False arguments can be conquered by factual ascertainment, understanding the truth. Talkativeness can be avoided by gravity and silence. Yeah, it never hurts to be quiet unless one has to speak about Krishna. Next one is by prowess, strength. One can avoid fearfulness. In other words, at least one should be intellectually powerful, have one's intelligence powerful, or be fixed in Shastra. And the 14th one, Bhisma's instructions, is perfect knowledge can be obtained by self-cultivation. In other words, you cultivate knowledge, especially Krishna consciousness, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So see, these are some of the instructions that Grandfather Bhisma gave during the final days on this earth when he was lying in the bed of arrows, and basically before that, the whole battle was going on around him. Of course, the Pandavas and the Kurus, they stationed soldiers to protect Grandfather Bhisma. But he was lying there in the middle of the battlefield, and every day they would come to see him, take his advice, and I guess they would provide for him and everything like that. So it wasn't just alone. So very interesting personality. So now we will take some questions. Let me unmute you all. and see what you have to say. Okay, let's see. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, here's one question from an anonymous Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. Could you please explain the potential problems such as Bhisma's with keeping promises, and specifically when dharmically it would be appropriate to break one's promise or when it's not appropriate? So breaking one's promise is to protect, basically protect the lives, spiritual lives of people, with extreme circumstances. That's the only time when it's appropriate. Someone's being attacked, not according to not Shankaracharya. What's his name again? Anyway, not not according to the guru of the demons. What's his name? Anyway, I forgot. Someone will remember. Who said you can lie when talking to ladies, you can lie when making business deals and things like that. No. The only time you can lie is protecting someone's life. And of course, sometimes Prabhupada said a businessman, Shukracharya, thank you for that. A businessman sometimes has to tell a white lie, like for you, there's no profit. But everybody knows it's a white lie. It's not like earth shattering or life changing or anything like that. But otherwise, truth should be kept. Truth. Devotees should be known as truth tellers because once you actually don't know the truth, then people won't have trust in you. That happens. Okay, good question. Who else has a question? You can unmute yourself. First you got to raise your hand. You got to raise your hand. Shama Priya, you have a question. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Can you hear me? You
I
can.
can hear you fine.
Thank you. My question is about Ashwatthama, since we are discussing the Mahabharata. Is he, first of all, I know that he's still around,
Yeah,
but is that his, I was just going through one of the articles, and in that it said that he is going to be around till the end of Kali Yuga
that's
and
right.
help Kalki. Is that right, to fight against this age and bring about Satyuga? Is that what he's
I,
going to do?
I don't know if he's going to help Kali, but he's actually going to be a preacher. That's what's said in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata doesn't say that he's going to help the Kalki avatar,
Okay.
but
Who else is around?
he's
Yes.
reformed. He's definitely reformed.
So he's no longer evil.
No, no, no. He's definitely learned his lesson.
Okay. Who else is around from the Mahabharata days for this
Vyasadeva.
purpose?
Vyasadeva is around. Uh, I'm sure there's
Parshuram?
Parshuram is around, not on the Earth planet, but
Okay.
Mahendra Parvata he stays at, and yeah, Vyasa.
Kripacharya.
Kripacharya, yeah, Kripacharya is still around. That's true.
And
And Vyasa,
Vibhishan is around.
Vibhishan. Well, he's not from the Mahabharata, so
Yes.
Vibhishan's from the Ramayana.
Mm.
And
Okay. Thank you, Gurudev.
Hanuman's around. If you want to get into the Ramayana,
Hanuman is here.
yeah, Hanuman's still around. Okay, good question. So, who else has a question?
Gurdev,
Raise your
how do
hand.
you how do you cultivate this quality of tolerance?
That
Especially,
by getting kicked a lot. So, um, yeah, we cultivate the quality of tolerance by seeing Krishna behind everything and understanding whatever happens outside of our control, which is 99.99%, is Krishna's arrangement. Like you see Dharma the bull. Typical story in the Bhagavatam. Dharma the bull is being beaten by the personality of Kali. And basically, he's tolerated. I mean, not that he just sits around and says, hit me, hit me, hit me, cut my legs off, but he doesn't blame Cully. He keeps his mind on an even keel because he sees that behind actions that we have no control of, uh, the hand of the Lord. You know, sometimes we look at what's happening in the world today, and without getting into any detail, some of the things in the news, like I said, not getting into detail. I will definitely not get into detail on this. Some of the things in the news are just like, oh my God, how can I tolerate? How can I tolerate? You know, oh my God. But you have to see Krishna's arrangement. Maybe he has a purpose. Maybe he's arranging a circumstance so the people are going to join the Hare Krishna movement like they did in the 1960s because the whole world was topsy-turvy. We don't know. You know, if an asteroid hits the planet, you know, you see all these news articles. NASA predicts this the asteroid is going to hit the planet. And then there'll be massive destruction, global cooling, no vegetables to eat. And so, oh my God, what happens? If it happens, it happens. Like Prabhupada was asked one time, if the atomic war happens, Prabhupada was presented with this, what are we going to do? Because there won't be anything to eat. And Prabhupada said, then we will die. Yeah, very nonchalant. There's only a fool says when death comes, then they complain about it. There's nothing you could do, you know, when the grim reaper comes, that's it. It's part of life. Whenever there's birth, death is certain. Wherever there is death, birth is certain. So one should not avoid doing his duties according to Krishna and Bhagavad Gita. So one tolerates unseen Krishna behind. Why is Krishna doing this? What is he teaching me? What am I supposed to do about it? Because if we blame the perpetrator, you know, the immediate cause of it, then we are culpable as much as the person who is doing it, according to the Bhagavatam. We are culpable. So, here's another question. Because he's a demigod, is Kali immune to the reactions to his activities? No, demigods are not immune to the reactions of their activities. I mean, we find that Indra, you know, when he killed devotees, he had to suffer a reaction. Like, he killed Vritrasura, and he had to suffer a reaction for it. And, you know, that was partially a karmic reaction. And Visvarup, he killed Visvarup, he had to suffer a reaction, then give that reaction out to different living entities, which we won't mention here. So, no, still got karma, buddy. So another point is Devapi, Shantanu's brother, is still around and will be there to start such a yuga. You got 1 minute. Here's another one. Dear Gurudev, you also mentioned to me in December that I become tolerant by being tolerant when I asked you how to become tolerant. It's by being tolerant. You tolerate, you see Krishna behind everything. That's how you become tolerant. And now it is the end, so you'll have to tolerate that being the end. Okay, thank you very much. A nice discussion about Grandfather Bhisma. All glories to his divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Whoops. Oh, tried to end.